Good morning. Ari here from Paradigm Threat. Topic of today, what is the deal with China? So we've heard all kinds of rumors about China since 21st century started, about how they're this great power that we're going to go to war with someday. And there's all kinds of clues in like science fiction, like Joss Whedon, Firefly, how Chinese language will be commonplace in the future. And we got stuff like Jade Helm. Why is it called Helm? There's Jade. Where'd the Jade come from? A lot of people think Jade Helm operation meant that the Chinese would someday participate in elimination of homeland resistance here in America. So let's look at the history so we can get some context here. China was founded, 1949, right? Before that, there wasn't much of a unified country. In 1911, there was a revolution in China where they created their own republic. You know how I talk about republics. So republics are very short-lived and hard-fought and usually suppressed heavily. So sure enough, when the Republic of China was founded in 1912, it was just under a constant assault from the Japanese, we know, and from America too, from other countries. And everyone wanted a piece of China. They wanted like cheap trade and all that. But what happened was the CCP brutally attacked the republic. The CCP is the Chinese Communist Party, and they were around back in 1912, and they said, we want a one China policy. We want to do things, the Marxist way, and the Republicans are trying to disagree. So there was a major war, civil war, and the Republicans lost, and they were actually driven out of the country. Currently, the Republic of China exists in Taiwan, in exile. And so you can see why Taiwan is so significant. It's either communism or the Republic of Taiwan. It's like a choice. So let's go back more history. What is China? Well, Scaligian historians will tell us that China was sort of cut off from all of history for the longest time until it started trading in a very discreet way. Very few travelers got in and silk got out in the 16th century, and then suddenly in the 19th century the dynasty starts to fall apart, and you get 20th century, you get the republic forming after a revolution. So why was China outside of history? Why was China not part of Scaligian history for a long time there? Was it really those Tibetan mountains? Was it the Himalayan mountain area? There's sort of the Tibetan plateau blocking off all access, because that doesn't make any sense. I mean, China's right there next to India, and you expect them to have traded. The Great Wall of China makes no sense because it doesn't protect anything inside of China. It's kind of scattered all over the place and broken, and an army could go around it very easily. It also doesn't keep people in. So Great Wall of China is a mystery. It does not appear on old maps. The Great Wall does not appear on old maps from the 18th, 17th century. On some, but not others. So since China was cut out of all history, since the Scaligians don't know where to place it, we can place it for them. China never existed before the 19th century. Before then, it was just part of that Russian Empire, the Rus Horde Empire. And the province of China was more or less independent the whole time. As the Russian Empire allowed the vassal states to retain their autonomy and authority. But the Russian Empire had a lot of problems with China, and it would constantly attack. And this made it into history as Genghis Khan attacking the Chinese soldiers, who fought miraculous battles. There's that one reference in The Office of 15 Chinese soldiers eating the seahorse powder and fighting off the entire army of Genghis Khan. Yeah, that was the Rus Horde Empire, Khan Tsar Empire. And the Chinese were constantly defeated by them, put in their place, and so were the Japanese. But they more or less retained their independence throughout all that time. And in that independence, they had their own perspective on their own history. They had their own empires, emperors, and their own dynasties. But Chinese dynasties were not independent from the rest of the world. They were, like I said, part of the Russian Empire. And when the British took over in the 19th century, they were the ones that divided China up, and India, and scattered their history too, and said, here's your new history from our Western perspective. China appeared out of nowhere, and a bunch of cheap labor, and we're going to bring them to America to build the railroads, right? That's the history of China, really. So, back to the empire. as China was part of a big empire, they had dynasties. But by the time their final dynasty came out in the 19th century, it wasn't really anything like the dynasties that had come before. In the 19th century was the Great Reset, and China, it today exists in a place where Russia and Siberia used to exist. This entire region of the earth was destroyed. Siberia Empire was destroyed. And that's why you see the Tibetan Plateau, a huge desert, a lightning scar, a massive one. And you see the Himalayan mountain sort of brushing matter down into India in this very artificial way, because it does not appear in old maps. It has no other place on Earth that looks like the Himalayan mountains. It's a completely unique phenomenon, that region. So all that mystery basically spells that Asia has been conquered over and over by the West. West gave them their Western version of history, which includes the Chinese dynasties essentially ruling their own people like not just kings, but gods. So where did that come from? Because that was not happening in the Russian Empire. There were no king gods yet. That happened in the 19th century again. China experienced the mud flood, and the Great Reset became a desert. And as it was a desert, the Chinese survivors were attempting to live any way they could. In the south, they had a lot of fish, so they mostly survived, but in the northern regions, in the desert, the only people to survive those regions were the chosen, and chosen by the deep state to survive the reset, to populate and control that region. So these so-called Dragon Clan Chinese dynasties from the 19th century, and I call them Dragon Clan because their own mythology traces their lineage back to dragons, and you'll hear them say this all the time. Right there is a big dupe. There are no real dragons, and there certainly aren't any dragons that evolved into humans. So, no, sorry guys, you're not part of a dragon dynasty. You were told that in the reset by your benefactors, by the ones who set you in China, and essentially represent the ruling order of the deep state in that region, the Dragon Clan. White dragon, black dragon, whatever you want to call them. They're not actually from the dragons. The dragon was their old symbol of Venus, and their records of history, like they had with everyone else when Venus came really close to the Earth. But then later on, there was this other dragon, this really scary one that sort of crept over the Earth and looking for anything and everything and just destroyed anything it saw or touched. And that dragon was the lightning scarring of the mud flood. It appeared in such a way, like a snaking lightning through the lowest and highest points of the ground. And so it was very impressive, and a lot of Chinese who survived the reset remembered this dragon, and so they're easily confused by their handlers to think that they were the descendants of these dragon gods. And that is the reason why China is in trouble right now. That's the reason. Because they would have figured it out by now. They would have figured out good capitalism or good communism. But thanks to Britain leaving behind this illusion of an old empire with thousands of years of slaughter and soldiers dying by the hundreds of thousands. I don't know who'd be proud of that history. These are redactions of just all the wars the Russian Empire had fought. And out of context, these Chinese battles seem terrible. Not glorious at all, but horrible. Like, they're just a bunch of warring tribes, essentially. Now I'm empire. Now I am emperor. So, the problems China has today: extreme communism, worst we've ever seen on this planet. And republicanism is on the run in Taiwan. And what does America do? We say, oh, we're going to help Taiwan be independent. But what do? We bring a bunch of military weapons, and we keep telling China that if they would ever touch Taiwan, we would defend Taiwan and our interests and blah, 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 blah. What does this sound like? This sounds exactly like the Ukraine thing, right? Where for some reason America and the West decides to back Ukraine in this two-sided war, very reminiscent of World War II, when we should not have taken one side, when we kind of create the problem out of nothing. And we have all the microchips created in Taiwan today. That was not an accident, that's by design. Shifted over to this new cell phone kind of tiny chip that can also render 3D graphics. Wow, It's got it all. But for some reason, only Taiwan knows how to build them. Here's a secret about microchips. They're micro for a reason. You got shrinking technology involved. Ain't nobody knows how to do this stuff except for people who already know how to do it. And those people, even if they gave you the technology, you would not be able to reproduce it. So the reason why all the chips are created in Taiwan is so that we can have a war in Taiwan, basically, someday. And the moment that we accuse China of attacking Taiwan, we will attack China, at which point we will lose, because you can see with Russia, we're not prepared. The plan was not to win a war with China, it was to lose one. And the communists here in America wanted to lose to the communists of China so that they could bring their system over here, not by force, but by necessity. After a devastating war between two of the biggest nations on earth, so much destruction would occur here in America and China. Would be shooting missiles at each other, like for no reason at all, just like the Ukraine thing. Civilians getting bombed and blaming each other and saying, oh, we don't bomb civilians, only they do. A horrible false flag war with China. And when it was all over, they would win because they have more people, more resources. They have it together. They don't have money problems. They don't have like a president like Biden who, is in dementia. They got their shit together. So they would come over here and they would have to repair everything. They would have to. They would want to, just like they do in all the other regions. They try to go to Yemen, they try to go everywhere that's been war, and they try to just fix things. And they don't impose their government, but by fixing things, if you want to use their system, then you've chosen their system, and America will sort of be forced to choose them over nothing, and then we will be in that credit system that we're all afraid of. That's how it would be implemented. Not by some executive order by Biden, that would never work, but by a horrible false flag war between us and China. And when it's all over, one of the sad outcomes of China repairing America would be that we know there's certain Americans that would resist to the last person, and they would shoot themselves and their own family before ever giving up to the Chinese, which, there you go, would give the Chinese final justification with our authority, because it's necessary, to eliminate the homeland resistance here in America. And that is what Jade Helm is all about. So bottom line, I'm not mad at China. I feel really bad for their history. I still don't know what to make of Mao, but I know that he was necessary for them to get that independence, even if their only choice was going to be communism for a long time. They want independence, and that's all they want, and they're getting it. And if they had to lose their soul to do it, they kept their sovereignty. Wasn't that what we're doing here in America? It's what everyone is doing in this world right now. Fighting the hard fight, sacrificing the things we don't want to sacrifice in order to save the thing that we cannot afford to lose. All right, guys, I hope that was informative, and I'm looking forward to peace with China and no warfare ever between our nations, because there isn't a single person in this country who is sane, or in that country, who is sane, who would want war. All right, guys, see you next time.